Escape Velocity is a book about power, and it's targeted to the management teams of established enterprises. The subtitle is Free Your Company's Future from the Pull of the Past, and it's targeting transition moments in the history of corporations where you need to move resources pretty dramatically from your existing businesses to future businesses. The premise of the book is that management teams have an exceptionally good vocabulary for talking about and strategizing and measuring the performance of their current business, but they don't have an equally effective vocabulary for addressing the problem of investments in future power. And so as a result, those investments tend to continually get marginalized in support of making the current quarter, making the current set of performance commitments. And we end up succeeding with performance, but defaulting on our commitments to creating future power. And as a result, over time, we milk the enterprise, and that enterprise gradually becomes more marginalized and eventually can fade from existence. So look at the following list of companies. Now, these are companies in the technology sector that have gone out of business in the last 30 years. They're not bad companies. These are iconic companies. These are the best companies that we've ever had. So the problem of moving resources to your next act, of transitioning to your next act, it's not a trivial problem. And this is a book devoted toward helping management teams address that issue. Now, when you look at these companies and you do research into them, there are 5 recurrent points of failure, places where you say, okay, this is where they got off track, and whatever we're going to do, we're going to have to fix for this problem. The first one is portfolio management. What happens is year after year after year, the overwhelming amount of their revenue is coming from their old businesses, and no matter what they do, they're just not getting enough revenue, material revenue, from anything new. So it's a portfolio management failure. There's a second problem, which is they may get into new categories, but they just don't have enough power as a company to become a leader in that new category. So they're struggling with getting enough of their resources pushed in the direction to make them very hard to compete against, to get what we call sustainable competitive advantage. That's a second point of failure. A third problem is, in developing categories, it's critical to win the early market segments, the ones that are going ahead of the herd. And this requires you to be able to focus effectively on small market segments that are strategic. This is a huge challenge for big companies who tend to want to deploy their resources globally across all markets all the time. So failure to focus on the critical markets at the critical times is the third point of failure. The fourth point of failure is more in the area of product management and innovation, and that is taking an offer beyond the limits of the category so that you really become a unique, desirable offering. You have dramatic competitive advantage with the offer itself, as opposed to being somewhat similar to the other offers in the categories. You set yourself beyond the others. And then the fifth and final one is a change management issue, which is you announce the new strategy, you declare the new organization, but when you actually go to execute in the field, it doesn't actually happen. So you announce these new initiatives and they don't get to the tipping points. So those are the 5 failures that you see some combination in companies that have failed to escape the pull of the past. They failed to free their company's future. So how do we fix that? Well, we need to have a better conversation around power. We have a great conversation in corporations around performance, but that's what tends to keep you tied to the pull of the past, because you're using your existing businesses to make all your performance commitments. But while you're making performance commitments, you're defaulting on your power commitments. And so the hierarchy of powers, which is the model which structures this book, is a way of talking about power that executives can use to ensure that they balance their commitments to power with their commitments to performance in order to be successful going forward.